What is going on, everybody? Happy Wednesday. Happy pre-lock day for the PGA Championship. Here we have our weekly DFS live stream. So excited to hop into it. I've done a ton of content this week, some stuff for Prize Picks, our usual YouTube stuff, a few other podcasts around the industry. So, pretty much every stone has been uncovered. Every player has had a full deep dive at this point. So ready to give you the picks, and we're really going to focus on the player pool. So let's start off with a quick review of the weather just to get it out of the way. And then we'll touch on the golf course before just starting to dive right in. And you can see the weather is kind of normalized. Towards the middle part of the week, the weather was actually a little bit more, as they say, severe there in the afternoon on Thursday. And of course, Friday morning, you still have this crazy near 50-mile-an-hour wind gust going to happen around 8 to 9 a.m. So you still have that quote-unquote AM-PM advantage over the PM-AM wave, but it's a little bit less severe now because you can see there's 30 to 40-mile-an-hour wind gusts here tomorrow morning. So pretty much no matter when you're playing, you're going to have at least some type of tough conditions for at least an hour or two out there. So in terms of the AM-PM split or PM-AM split, I'm treating them relatively the same. Now, this 30 to 50-mile-an-hour winds here on Friday morning, that's just another level of ugly, right? That is going to be, it's 20-mile-an-hour sustained winds, which is bad enough. It could be, +3, +4 territory when it comes to average score and that type of stuff. So if there's going to be any type of a lean, it would be towards, the split we were looking at early in the week, which was the AM-PM split, but it's not nearly as strong as what we saw before. Let's hop into the player pool. We're going to go over the key stats to go ahead and start this off. Just to have a review of the golf course. This is a difficult track. It's relatively long for a par 70 at nearly 7,600 yards. So you're going to have to be able to hit it long off the tee. That is, of course, going to be an asset here. Your approach play is going to have to be fine-tuned. There's extremely small targets out there, right around 5,000 square foot on average. And you're sure as heck going to have to be able to get up and down. So even though it's only here at 14% in my modeling, that's 2, 3, maybe even 4 times higher than what I usually have. At the Byron Nelson, I weighted it in 1.5%, right? So it's, over 10 times more important at this golf course than it was for last week. So just understand that these are relative numbers. In fact, for approach play to only be weighted in 30% of my model was actually relatively low. It's typically closer to 35 or 40%. It's a little bit more evenly distributed this week because you're going to get tested across the board. You're going to miss plenty of fairways this week because of the wind. You're also going to miss plenty of greens. Even without wind, you'd miss a ton of greens around Southern Hills with how small the targets are. And the around the green shots are among the most difficult in the world. In the green, because of that same difficulty, there's a ton of undulation on the surfaces. Just every single shot you hit around this place is difficult. You're going to be tested. So I really want people that gain across all 4 categories ideally, but the one non-negotiable this week is going to be around the green play. No matter how good you are with your ball striking, you're probably missing 6, 7 greens at the very least, round in and round out, which, for players like a Victor Hovland, Dustin Johnson, just to name a few off the top of my head, that tend to struggle with getting up and down, could be a rough week. And one thing I'll mention is you might want to look at some of the around the green stats off of the fairway or out of the rough in terms of your proximity, because it's all going to be off of the fairway. So you want to kind of ignore all of the rough numbers that you can. A few guys that are particularly skilled at chipping out of the rough, not necessarily so much on the fairway, include Jon Rahm, Victor Hovland, who I just talked about, Dustin Johnson, a little bit better out of the rough than he is out of the fairway. And I believe Sam Burns was the other one. He's a little bit better out of the rough, a little bit less skilled out of the fairway. And the one commonality between all of those players, or the one thing they have in common, I should say, is that they're all relatively unskilled around the green. And I don't know why the rough tends to bring the field a little bit closer together in terms of their skill gap. Whereas when you have the shaved off areas, the difficulty of the shots is a little bit higher. That's where you start to see the separation around the green. So I'm going to expect some of these guys to struggle. That's why I'm not playing a Jon Rahm this week. That's why I'm not playing a Victor Hovland this week, and also why Dustin Johnson is a fade. So that's not why I'm fading Scotty Shepherd. We'll talk about it here in a second, but that's just something that a lot of these players have in common. A few other things to note with the key stats here is that putting is a little bit more important this week than most weeks. I have it weighted in 22% of my model here, which week in and week out, it's in that 15 to let's say 25% range. So it's a little bit more important than most weeks, but it's not an elite level like something like around the green is. Also taking a look at some shots gained at majors. It's of course important anytime you have a big event like this. Par 4 scoring. There's 2 extra par 4s at this event and 3 putt avoidance because of how difficult these greens can be. We'll catch up on chat, see if there's anybody down there before we hop into it. And I remind you, if you have any questions throughout the stream or somebody that you want to deep dive on, just go ahead and throw them down below. Now, if we're talking about the studs, like we will be for probably the next 15 to 20 minutes, try and keep it to the top half of the board or something like that. When we get down to the value picks, feel free to go ahead and put all of those deep dive flyer plays down there as well. Catch me if you can down here says, when does the Gsluke merchandise hit the market? Hopefully sometime soon. I have to get around to that. That's a pretty good idea. I'll have to put that on the docket there. Noted. Nick Marsh says, fading Rahm and Scheffler, probably the scariest thing I'll do this weekend, but you can't play everyone up there, right? Completely agree, right? I have Scotty Shepherd down as a no. We'll talk about it here in a second. I do have a reason for it. It's not just a pure ownership thing for me. But Jon Rahm, though, it's just an opportunity cost thing. Now, I don't really have a reason for fading Jon Rahm this week. That's why he's down as a blank. If I could play Jon Rahm, I would. But like you said, you can't play everyone up top, at least if you're trying to get adequate leverage. So I'm picking and choosing my spots up top. We'll talk through all of them. We're going to talk through all of these stud tier options here. Maxwell says Tiger to make the cut all day long. 100% agree. I have a lot of money on that this week, a lot more than I should because I believe in it so much. So definitely agree with you there, Maxwell. I'll be rooting him on, that's for sure. Robert says Gsluke iron head covers coming soon. No, I will not sell those iron head covers. That's blasphemous. Anybody that uses them instantly looks like a little bit of a tool to me, but that's just me. Starlord says, is Hadman still a great play with the wind? Yeah, like I said, it's both waves. They're going to get hit by the wind, a little bit more severe for the PM AM wave than it will be for the AM PM. But yeah, I'm not nitpicking at it too much. I think a lot of people are kind of overreacting to it, particularly when, the wind has kind of changed over the last day to where that wind from Thursday afternoon has shifted into the morning. That's why it was such a big deal, right? Because they were getting double whammed, right? They were getting the wind tomorrow afternoon and the wind tomorrow morning. Now it's just the wind. Sorry, I should say Friday morning. Now it's just the wind Friday morning. So it's not nearly as important as I was making it yesterday, just because the forecast did change. So David Porter says Homa. I do like Max Homa. He's good at difficult tracks. We'll talk about him in detail. And Joshua says thoughts on a Tringali Pivot. I'm not the biggest fan of him here. It's the around the green play, especially over the last 50 measured rounds. He's really struggled there. And like I said, the one non-negotiable for me this week is around the green. Like you 100% have to have the around the green this week to put up a ceiling performance. Now, he's super cheap, right? He's like, what, $7,000. He's like 1% owned. You might be able to get away with a top 20 finish with somebody at his price tag. But I like guys a little bit more around him. So we'll talk about some of the pivots there for sure. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and talk through this. We're going to go in order. So, David, I see you asking about Max Homa. We'll talk about him when we get down to the 8K range. So let's start at the top of the board, though. So Scotty Shepherd at $11,400. The fade is because of his bent grass putting. So somebody who struggles mightily on bent grass. In fact, he loses 2/3 of a stroke more per round on bent grass than how he's putted of late, which shows that we could very well see some regression. And last week, we had bent grass greens at the Byron Nelson. You saw him struggle, particularly with the eye test, right? He was missing so many birdie putts. These putts might be par this week, right? Because it's a difficult golf course. A lot of those putts that he was missing in that 10 to 15 foot range are going to be bogeys this time around rather than a par. So it didn't look all that ugly last week, but if he continues to putt at that same type of rate, it could get ugly real quick. And at the Masters, you guys might not recall this because, we hit so many shots in there close for birdie. He made a ton of 20, 25 footers for par. I mean, particularly there on Saturday and Sunday, he was absolute nails over the weekend. Those were bent grass greens. They're running fast. They have a ton of undulation, which really, reminds me a lot of what we're going to see this week. I mean, maybe that's the only hesitancy with this fade, except that from a historical standpoint, he's been atrocious on these greens, right? So it's, do we trust that one round sample size, or do we trust what we saw last week along with what we've seen for his career? And as a stats guy, right, I'm going to take the larger sample size. It's just, that's how numbers work, right? That's the more confident projection that we can go with. And I know people are going to run with Scotty Shepherd. It makes sense, right? He's coming in world number one, all these wins and whatnot. It's just, I feel like it's someone else's time. I said it down in my Discord today that he was going to be a fade for me because I felt like it was someone else's time, which is a horrible reason to make a fade, right? As a numbers guy. But the more and more I dove into the Bentgrass numbers, it gave me a little bit of a limb to stand on, right? A little bit of footing there. So that's why we're fading him. He's about 20% owned. Again, if he goes out there and wins for the fifth time in like 3 months, I wouldn't be all that surprised. But I also wouldn't be all that surprised if the putting really, really cost him there, because it looked kind of ugly last week. And it was a lot of short putts that he was missing, that 5 to 7 foot range. I mean, with the winning score in the mid-20s under par, everyone was making putts. That's when it starts to get a little bit concerning for me. Jon Rahm's a fade because of the around the green play. I had to try and find a reason to fade him. Of course, the ball striking is always going to be among the best on the PGA Tour. For quite some time, he's right around neutral for his last 24, which isn't all that bad, right? But if you take a look at the last 50, he's a slight loser to the field. So he's always pretty mediocre around the green. And like I said, his numbers out of the rough around the green are much better than his numbers out of the fairway. And really, a lot of the sentiment for people that are hammering Jon Rahm this week has been, he played so well at Muirfield Village, which is a comp course I'm using for this week, except a lot of the people are narrowing down on his around the green play that week. How many times he was getting up and down. He made it look super easy. That's because there's rough around the green there. You don't really have those 30 to 40 yard around the green shots. Like I said, Jon Rahm, one of those players that has a much higher efficiency at getting up and down out of the rough versus out of any other cut of grass. So not really a surprise that at Muirfield Village, of course, with all of those surrounds with rough around him, he played well, right? He got up and down. He won. He's been so successful at that venue over the years. Not really a surprise to me. So at $11,200, I'm fading him just because I expect that around the green play to come back to earth. I mean, from the eye test, you've seen it before. Jon Rahm, he doesn't always have the best around the green play. Especially under crunch time. You'll see him yeeting it 6 to 7 feet past all the time, leaving it 10 to 15 feet short. And at this golf course, rather than 10 to 15 feet short or 6 feet long, you could be 20 feet long or you could be off the green short, right? That's the type of margins that you have at Southern Hills. That's how difficult of a golf course this is. And that's why around the green is non-negotiable. Your misses around the green are going to be doubled, maybe tripled in distance. A shot that ends up 1.5, 2 feet at other golf courses might end up 5 to 6 feet from the pin here. So you either better make all of those putts, or you better go out there and hit it to 1 foot on every single hole and just be outstanding around the green. That's the type of golf course that this is. Just from all the research that I've done, everything I've heard, from interviews, from people on the golf course, from flyovers, from Gil Hance himself, the person that's done the renovation. That's the type of golf course that this is going to play like. So the guys that we are targeting, right? We talked about Jon Rahm. We talked about Scotty Scheffler. It's guys that I'm, unfortunately happen to overlook. It's guys like Justin Thomas. That's unbelievable around the green. In fact, he's on my top 5 short list for best short games on the PGA Tour. So, we know the form he's coming in with. He's number 1 in my modeling. Shouldn't be a surprise. And he's 1.6% higher owned than somebody like a Scotty Scheffler. It's a lot closer than it should be. JT should be like 25% owned at this slate at the very least. And at that type of number, I'd still be comfortable getting to him. At this point, I'm imagining I'll have right around 40% Justin Thomas. I'm not going to be all in on the guy, but, much like last week where he was a core pick for us, of course, he was a vital part of my lineups. I see him having a similar performance, if not better, right? Coming through, winning another PGA championship. So I'm there at 10,007. I also like $10,400 Morikawa. He's playing in the afternoon wave, which I was kind of worried about yesterday. Did not take myself off of him, kept my exposure where it was. And now that the weather has kind of turned around the other way, where it's a little bit more even across the board now, he becomes even more attractive. So you'll notice that of anybody that's just hopping in here late, the weather has changed on Thursday. And I feel like not a lot of people have talked about it, but go ahead and check it out. Wind Finder, Tulsa, find the wind station that's near the golf course. The wind actually tomorrow morning is higher than the afternoon. So that's just a quick SparkNotes version of the weather breakdown that we did before for anybody that's hopping in here late. But that's why guys like Collin Morikawa, I'm completely back in on. I think he's going to have a great week here. Rory Mcilroy, we talked about him. He's playing tomorrow morning, which I thought was going to be advantage. But either way, I like the fact that the around the green play for Rory has been unbelievable over the last 24 rounds. In fact, if we go over and take a look at it, he's gaining close to 2/3 of a stroke per round, gaining significantly off the tee and on approach. The putter has kind of cooled down for Rory, but that's what carried him in the fall, right? So it's not that far out there. He's done it relatively recently with the putter. And if he hits the ball like he did at Wells Fargo and then finds the putter, he's winning this by 5-10. He's running away with it, right? That's the kind of firepower that Rory McIlroy has when he's hitting the ball like he has over his last 3 to 4 events. It's a scary proposition to fade. That's all I'm going to say there. Victor Hovland, he's going to be a fade at every single major championship that we play at until he proves me otherwise. I've faded him in every major, and it's worked out every single time. So not going to question it. I'm still going to go with it. He has issues around the green. Like, he makes cuts at majors, but he's not going to finish in that top 5 or win. He hasn't really even sniffed contention at a major championship. So I don't understand why people just kind of forgive and forget that with Victor. His track record at majors, I mean, for somebody of his pedigree, right, a top 10 player in the official World Golf rankings, he is by far the least impressive of all of their resumes. So I'm surprised it's not a bigger deal. If he misses the cut this week, it might start to become a big deal. Like, people around the mainstream media might start to talk about it a little bit because it's already an issue, at least in my opinion. Cameron Smith here at $9,700. I like him at his price tag. He's one of the best short games on the entire PGA Tour. Now, he took some time off. He hasn't played these last few weeks. Last time we saw him, he wasn't all that sharp with the driver. Zurich Classic, that is. He wasn't really all that sharp, but he took some time off. Knowing him, he didn't touch a golf club these last few weeks. He's probably out there just fishing day in and day out. But if there's anybody I'm not worried about, at least when it comes to form, it's Cameron Smith, because the guy, he's kind of like a Brooks Koepka, where he only plays golf because he has to or because he feels like he has to. He'd rather be doing anything else, mostly fishing, being on his boat. So he's one of the few guys like a Brooks, we'll talk about him here in a second, where at major championships, courses where getting up and down, having that short game matters. It's just a big field event in general. It's going to be one of my favorite plays. So in terms of the modeling, right, loves him. He's number 6 of the modeling. Projected cut rate, 94.12%. I mean, just one of the safest plays that you can find out there. So I like the fact that the fairways are large for him. If anything, he does struggle with that miss left off the tee. Not a lot of creeks to the left at this golf course. In fact, most of them run down the right side of fairways. So if he's going to have that pull happening, right, it's at least not going to be pulling into a creek most of the time. There's a few holes where it's on the left, mostly on a par 3. I think it's hole number 6, maybe hole number 11, something like that. Either way, I digress. Love him this week. Think he's a great play. Jordan Spieth, probably don't even have to talk you into the play at this rate, right? Win, second place finish. Ball striking looks unbelievable for Jordan. It's a course where you have to get up and down. It's one of the most slam dunk plays that you can think of, which makes it risky, right? He's going to be extremely chalky, but I can't talk you off of it. And I don't have any interest in talking you off of it. He's one of my favorite players in the world. So if everything's pointing to him having a solid week, I mean, you already know I'm going to have like 40, 50% Jordan Spieth. That's just how it goes on this channel. It's what I do week in and week out. And last 2 times out, it worked out pretty damn good, if you ask me. Dustin Johnson here is a fade. I talked about his around the green play. I also you need to be able to move the ball both ways. You have a ton of dog legs that go from right to left and left to right. Anytime you're in trouble, the way that it's designed forces you to have to hit extreme hooks or extreme slices around a few corners. He doesn't have the hook shot. Like, Dustin Johnson cannot hit a draw for his life. In fact, when he goes to hit a draw, he looks like one of us. It doesn't go very well. That's why he always hits the fade shot. It's because it works for him. That's how his swing is set up. It makes sense if you think about his mechanics. And I don't want to get too technical here, but he has that bowed wrist where he cocks it back when he's swinging. You'll see it tomorrow if you watch him play. If he changes that, right, tries to hit a draw, you have to have some wrist action to hit a draw mostly, at least for most people. He can't do that. It's just completely off the mechanics that he goes with. So I worry about that, but I also worry about the around the green play. Xander looked much better than I thought he would last week, right? It was a fade for us. And after, what was it, like 24 holes, he was like +3. I think down in the Discord chat, I was like, haha, Xander missed the cut. Let's go. And naturally he makes the cut, ends up finishing in the top 5 by the end of the week. That's what I get for early victory lapping something. That's just what happens. I deserved it after doing that type of thing. But I'm impressed by it. I wanted to see something from him. I asked for it, right? I said, we need to see something from Xander, like show some life. I don't believe that a team event was enough life for me to jump on the bandwagon, but after last week's weekend performance, where he was by far the best player on the golf course, I'm in on him because the issue was the fact I thought he wasn't aggressive enough, right? I thought that, the games there, he gains across all 4 categories, right? If you take a look at the last 24 measured rounds, that's still the case. He's a positive across all 4. I believe over the last 50, he should be as well. Yeah, he always is. He's always gaining across the board. I mean, every time you take a look at his shots gain metrics, he's just going to be solid, rock solid across the board. And that's what wins majors, particularly difficult majors, where, like I said, you have to be good at everything. That's his MO. And now that results in a lot of pars, right? He doesn't go out there. He doesn't shoot 8, 9 under par all that often. Now you saw it last weekend, right? That's why I'm kind of excited about the play. Major championships, right? You shoot 1 under par every single day here. I think you win this golf tournament. I expect the winning score to be single digits at the very most under par, if not over par. I've said this multiple times. I actually bet a prop for the winning score to be over par this week. I got like 15-1 odds. It could be one of those tournaments, and it does not happen very often on the PGA Tour. So just something to keep an eye on. If it's one of those tournaments, Xander Schauffele is live to win, live to go out there and win his first major. Patrick Cantlay at $9,100. Liked him going into the week. Was worried about him, just like Colin Morikawa, because of the morning afternoon wave thing. But that has been alleviated ever since we got the change in the forecast. So even more so on Patrick. Unfortunately, a lot of the industry is too. They're at 20% ownership, but I'll be eating it. I think it's understandable, right? He's a good course fit. There's a reason why he was a core pick for us. And it was a pretty obvious pick. I kind of mentioned that in the core picks, right? That he would be chalky, right? People would, see the price tag, look at the recent form. A lot of people weren't talking about him at the beginning of the week, but it feels like everybody's on him here, right? He has the win, second place, 39th, 26th at the match play, which actually isn't very good. But outside of that, right, it's just impressive finish after impressive finish. 20% might be low, kind of like on a Justin Thomas, right? So I'm going to have about 40% Patrick Cantlay, if not closer to 50% in my lineups this week. Now, Brooks Koepka is a little bit more of a, let's say, leverage play, right? It's not going to be a 40, 50% owned play for me this week. Something closer to 20, maybe 25% at the very most. But this is a major championship. These are the golf tournaments that Brooks Koepka shows up at. It's a tournament he's won twice. He's talked this week that he likes these type of setups, especially with the PGA of America that goes out there and really makes it a test. Kiwa Island, it kind of did it on its own, right? Super long golf course, all that wind out there. This week, the wind's going to be there, but I'd expect them to make it even harder with these pin locations. Like, it's a golf course where if they choose hard pin locations, and Tiger Woods said it best, he mentioned it during his interview there on Tuesday, that if Gil puts the pin locations in hard spots, winning score is going to be over par. Like, period, the end. Now, he didn't say that. He said it was going to play unbelievably difficult, but that's the type of scenario I'm talking about, where this place plays like 6 shots over par, like especially on Friday, where you have those conditions there in the morning. It's I'm looking forward to it. If you guys have been here on the channel, I like when these players are tested, even to extreme degrees. Like when they're saying it's an unfair golf course, I like seeing that because, Byron Nelson, Tournament of Champions, you're getting this 25, 30 under par winners. That's boring to me. Like I actually turned off the Byron Nelson. I wasn't enjoying it that much. I very much so enjoy when these players are struggling. Go ahead and catch up on chat down here. Let's see. We got Tom T saying trivia, last 10 Southern Hills, 7 majors, 2 tour in the senior championships. The leader after 36 holes has won the tournament. So maybe something to consider with the guy who's winning after 36 holes, particularly if it's a juicy number. If we're getting something that's, maybe a surprise name that's up there, might be worth a few bucks on that for sure. Nick Marr says, thoughts on Fleetwood when you get there? Yeah, we'll talk about him. I like him this week. And Roman says, thoughts on Rory? I absolutely like Rory here. He's due for a big event. He's due for a big finish here at some point. He's got the distance we're looking for, the around the green play we're looking for. The approach play has returned. That was an issue for him over the fall. And I think the sky's the limit for him this week. I absolutely love him. I actually have an outright bet on him to win. Him, Shane Lowry, I have an outright bet on at this point, and Jordan Spieth, I have an outright bet on. So those would be my top 3 plays of this week. And Kevin Lane says, thoughts on Mido versus Bobby Mack? For me, it's Bobby Mack all day. I'll talk about Bobby Mack in detail later on. I do have both in my player pool, so it's not like I hate Mido this week. Still like him, but Bobby Mack, top 10. I've already bet it this week. I love Bobby Mack this week. And Chris Palmer, last question before we hop back in, says cash head-to-head, Cam Smith versus Spieth. Ooh, Spieth because he's higher owned, and in cash, that'll be a good thing. He could be 40, maybe 50% owned in cash, but it's close. In terms of skill set, it's almost identical at this point. They both struggle off the tee with their accuracy. They can be a little bit inconsistent on approach, but when they have it on approach, both of them are really sharp. I mean, yeah, they're almost carbon copies of each other. So I would go Spieth just because of the ownership there. Now, if you're playing GPPs, that's when I prefer somebody like Cam Smith, right? Because then we want lower ownership. So yeah, I know your question was about cash though. So that's what I'd go with. Alrighty, so we'll go back to chat here in a second. So we'll talk about this 9 and 8K range. Then I'll circle back there on the chat. But we talked about Brooks Koepka. I'm taking a shot on him. He's going to be right around 20-25% owned for me. Willie Z, I talked up yesterday as a sleeper pick, and now I expected him to be much higher owned, right? People have an infatuation with playing Will Zalatoris, and it makes sense. He showed up at majors to this point. Bent grass is his favorite surface, and yeah, I think the sky's the limit for Willie Z. This could be his breakthrough performance. I haven't bet him outright or anything, but my DFS exposure will have to be enough this week. Shane Lowry is my favorite play on the slate. Anybody that's just asked me who I think wins this week, like considering the number who I think like the best bet on the board is, it's Shane Lowry. It's not even close. I have a really weird feeling he wins this thing and wins it pretty handedly, actually. So we'll have to see if that comes to fruition by the end of the week. But I've told at least 100 people that I think Shane Lowry is going to win this week. At least. It might be more than that, to be honest with you. There's another 33 of you in the stream right now that I just told, so it's probably up to 150 at this point. Daniel Berger here, $8,600. I like the fact that he's a well-rounded player. He gains across the board. Down in South Florida, he showed an ability to play in the wind, which makes sense since he has such a low apex height. And I considered fading because of the health. He actually has, a bad back at this point. That's been well noted. He's had to withdraw from some golf tournaments. But if he's healthy, and I mean, you saw what a healthy Daniel Berger can do down there at the Honda Classic. He could contend this week. I don't know about winning. Daniel Berger just kind of strikes me as a non-major champion. I hate to say it. Like, I hate to be a dick about it, but yeah, he kind of strikes me as like a guy who wins some PGA Tour events. He'll show up from time to time. Maybe he contends. Maybe he gets one by the end of his career. He's got a long career ahead of him. Tiger Woods here at $8,200. I am playing him. I have a feeling he finishes in the top 10 this week. And at $8,200, that might be enough. I don't think he wins. I'll just say that right now. I'm not willing to place an outright bet on Tiger Woods. You have to be like 100 to 1 or something like that for me to end up betting him. And depending on what book you're at, you might get a boosted odds to something like 100 to 1. Then it might be worth a gander, but I like him in DFS a little bit more. If this is going to be an extremely difficult golf course, like I think there's the opportunity for it to be, particularly if Saturday and Sunday it's a little bit windier than we expect right now. That's the type of golf tournament that he could contend at, right? And I don't want to talk about it too much because obviously there's a lot of risk involved with Tiger. A lot of you are probably just going to play Tiger, right? So this 5.5%, I feel like it's going to be low. I feel like he's going to be like 10, 15% owned come tomorrow morning. But either way, I'll at least be right at the field or slightly over the field when it comes to his ownership. Max Homa, $8,100. Promised we'd talk about him. So first off, Genesis Invitational. I don't want to say a carbon copy of what we're going to see this week, but it's getting close to it because it's a golf course where the greens are rounded off on the sides. There's a lot of runoff areas, a lot of undulation, small green surfaces to try and hit. That's the same type of challenge that players will have this week. Now, the one major difference I would say is obviously time of year. Green surface is different. I believe it's POA over there for that tournament. Obviously, this week it's bent grass. Just in terms of skill set, right? You got to be able to, hit greens there, and when you miss them, you got to be able to get up and down. That's what Max Homa does well. So I like him there, $8,100. His around the green stats aren't all that good, but at comp courses, he's played super well. So I'm willing to take a risk there. And he's one of the few players that his proximity off the fairway is advantageous. He's actually one of the worst players at chipping out of the rough. So that's probably the reason for a lot of his around the green woes is because of that rough. So at a golf course without it, kind of like what you have at the Genesis Invitational, maybe he can tune into that around the green play because he's going to need it. Like I said, it's it's pretty close to a non-negotiable for me. Terrell Hatton and Cory Connors, I should say especially Terrell Hatton, doesn't deal with issues around the green. He's one of the best players with his short game in the world. I think he's slept on in that department. He doesn't get nearly as much credit as he deserves. So just 5.7% projected ownership, which is criminally low. He should be 10, 15% owned on this slate and will certainly have more than the field. It's not like he's coming in with bad form either. It's been adequate. He's been getting the job done. Cory Connors at $8,000. I like the ball striking. I like the fact that he's shown an ability in the wind. I worry about the around the green play. So, kind of similar to a Max Homa, the around the green statistics don't look all that good, but he was also first round leader at Kiowa Island last year. So he's shown an ability to play in the wind. And if he can just hit enough greens to not bleed strokes around the green, I could see him getting the job done this week, not winning, but posting something in the top 10. Matt Fitzpatrick, love his skill set. Love the fact that the weather has kind of equalized for him as well. Tony Finau, he's not nearly as popular as I expected. So I kind of held off on playing him because I thought he might be something like 15, 20% owned this week. And I only have him at 11.5%. He's a good bent grass putter. The ball striking is starting to return for Tony Finau, particularly the approach play. And around the green, this year he hasn't been the best. You can see he's just a slight loser to the field, but historically he's a gainer to the field around the green. And over the last 50 measure rounds, I know it gets worse. Let's see how much worse is it? Yeah, it goes into the negative, right? So he's starting to improve in that category. He's starting to get back to the Tony Finau that's pretty damn good around the green. So I like him there at $7,900. Abraham Answer's too short for this course. He's also horrible around the green. So a lot of issues there for Answer I don't like. Webb Simpson, he looks injured to me, particularly with the stats. If we take a look at the shots gained, they're not favorable. He's losing in 3 out of the 4 categories. So I'm going to be off of Webb for this week. I just want to see a little bit of form from him first. And at a major championship, right, you don't have to take chances on the guys that are coming in with form like that. Adam Scott and Mark Leishman, I like both of their short games, particularly Adam Scott's iron play. I think that'll suit him pretty well this week. Tommy Fleewood, I promise to do a deep dive on him too. His shots gain metrics are just beautiful. He's getting across the board. Every single shots gain category is a gainer, significantly on approach and off the tee. I mean, the recent form has been decent. I don't really understand the pricing here or the fact that he's only 10% owned, right? He's 7% less owned than Cameron Young. And let's have the Cameron Young conversation. Cameron Young, unbelievable shots gain metrics, right? You know how I said, around the green, non-negotiable? Well, that's his second best stat, right? So it's a hard fade to make, right? But hear me out here, right? Cameron Young, young player, right? He's at the Masters. He missed the cut pretty horribly, if you guys remember, right? And then next week came out, almost won the RBC Heritage, right? That's just what happens with Cameron Young. He's extremely volatile. One week he'll play well, next week go out there, completely miss the cut. At the Masters, his issue was with the putter. He just was leaking strokes. He's an aggressive player. He's going to get the ball to the hole and probably then some on almost every single putt that he hits. And at a golf course with greens like this, he gets penalized. And that's the issue that I have. At least that's my theory behind Cameron Young. It's a working theory, obviously, given that he's so new on the PGA Tour, but he's just way too popular for my liking. I mean, 17% owned here in the 7K range. That's like a stud tier option guy being 35 to 40% owned, right? It's all relative based on what range you're in. I mean, even 10%, especially something like 16% up here with the Matt Fitzpatrick, like that's mega chalk here in the 7K range. So just understand that a 17% owned guy in the 7K range is a little bit different than up top. So I'm more likely going to fade guys like that, particularly because you can see there's a ton of yeses in this range, a ton of players that I see myself getting to. I'm not the biggest Jason Day or Keegan Bradley fan. I think that Keegan Bradley is being a little bit overrated, to say the least there. I love Billy Horschel. Talked about him as a core pick. He's well-rounded. He's got the off the tee we're looking for. The approach play has been there. Just feels like it could be Billy Host time soon. Taylor Gooch, great bounce back spot. I could see myself getting there. Gary Woodland, very well-rounded game. I like that for him, especially of late. He's been a lot better around the green than he was historically. Justin Rose, it's more of a flyer pick. I can't really say anything good about him. I have a feeling. I hope he goes out there and impresses me this week. We'll have to see. You got to take chances on people, right? KH Lee, for example, right? He missed 6 out of his last 7 cuts, whatever the heck it was. I know it was like 2 out of his last 3 at the very least. Wins Myron Nelson, right? you're going to have guys that just shake off that type of form, figure it out for whatever reason. And it's usually when they have a good skill set fit, which makes sense, right? Cagely won the Byron Nelson last year. So clearly he has an affinity for that golf course. Well, guys like Justin Rose, who is struggling right now, kind of similar to a Cagely, has an affinity for difficult conditions, right? So that's why I'm willing to take a risk on somebody like that. So that's why he's in the player pool there at $7,200. I'm getting close to that 6K range, and there are quite a few plays in the 6K range I will be getting to. So actually a lot more than most weeks. So we are going to be a little bit aggressive up top. You got Patrick Reed in the pool, great at getting up and down. Russell Henley, he played well at the Open Championship, and kind of getting Open Championship vibes from this golf course this week. So in terms of a comp, I liked that. Same thing with Sepp Straka. He played well down in South Florida in the super windy conditions. Great around the green player, so I could see that working out. Siwoo Kim played well at the Players Championship, a well-rounded player too. I could see that working out there. McNeely let everyone down last week, even though he didn't play all that bad, right? He finished it was like top 25, something like that. I'm willing to get there. He's only 4.2% owned this week, also a lot cheaper. Thomas Pieters has shown up at majors in the past. Now, if you put him at an easy golf course, he's really floundered the bag over the years, but he's really good around the green. Perhaps it's the difficult conditions that bring the best out of him. His other good finishes were at the API as well, which is, the most, or just say one of the most difficult PGA Tour events that we have on schedule. Tom Hoagie, great ball striker, great from tee to green. So I'm targeting him for that reason. Alex Noren's perhaps my favorite play on the slate. I talked about him as a core pick, at least considering price. I think he's the most mispriced player on the slate. So love him there. He's a gainer on bent grass. The ball striking has been there of late, a gainer across all four categories. Brian Harmon, I have no idea why he withdrew. So I'm fading him until we know what the heck's going on. I just don't see a reason to risk it at a major championship. Christian, I should say, Zane Hoot. I'll be getting there in a few lineups. He's a very similar to a Matt Fitzpatrick, similar to a Xander Schauffele, where they're going to bore you to death going out there and making pars. And at this golf course, that could be the job to get it done, or the way to get the job done. Harold Varner III has been playing some unbelievable golf. See, he's number 11 in my modeling. And if we take a look at why, first off, gaining a ton on approach, gaining off the tee, gaining around the green, and with the putter. So across the board is gaining to the field. So certainly somebody that I have my eye on. I have Ian Poulter. I like the fact that he's got a really solid short game. Another guy I'm just putting in 5-6% of my lineups, taking a shot on there. Ricky Fowler, same exact circumstance. He's been a lot better at major championships over the last year and a half, 2 years, which he has struggled mightily at. He's at least been good at majors, which makes sense. He's a short game specialist, right? That's what he's known for, around the green and putting. And that's exactly what we need this week. And last year at Kiawah Island, it was another one of those golf courses, right? Look at the leaderboard. It was all around the green specialists at the top, I guess, except for Brooks. But Brooks at major championships, just different, right? He's built different at major championships. That's Brooks Koepka. Ricky Fowler was up there too, with guys like a Padraig Harrington, Shane Lowry, Phil Mickelson, right? The best around the green player of all time. It's not a surprise to see him up there, and we could see him once again if it plays as difficult as I'm hoping it does. Seamus Power at $7,000. He's not the best around the green player, but he's well-rounded. He's not horrible around the green, I should say. He gains across all the other categories. Let's see, where is he at? Seamus. You can see slight loser around the green. Now approach play, that's just been a recent thing, right? He's had a few rough tournaments, but last time out looked a lot sharper. In fact, made the cut, was in contention there until a little bit later on Sunday, especially early on Sunday, he was in contention. So I have my eyes on him too. Just in terms of pedigree, he's a lot better than his peers down here. We'll catch up on chat. I'm sure there's a few questions, a few comments down there. So let's see what we got. Yes, there certainly are. We have Michael, he says, thoughts on Riley, possibly a pivot over Mido. I like Mido. I also like Riley this week. I could see it. I'm not going to talk you off that. I think that makes a lot of sense, Michael. Tom T says, I heard today that Matsuyama was complaining about neck pain other than his previous injury and said that he needed to play today to see if it would affect him. Hear anything? I heard the same exact news. I have no interest in playing him. I was already kind of sketched about Hideki because he was like 20% owned on Tuesday in terms of my projections. Today, it's gone way down because of that news that you're talking about. I have no interest in him, right? It's a major championship. If there's any type of injury concern about one of these players, I'm going to be off them because, that could hamper their play. Of course, they can miss a cut or withdraw because of that. But more importantly, it's hard enough to win a major championship, right? If you're a stud tier option and you're telling me that now there's an injury to worry about too, you're like, no, thank you, right? I'll pick my spots elsewhere. There's a lot of studs up there that I have a lot more interest in playing. So, I would recommend everyone not to play him. I didn't even talk about it because I had him as a no, but that was the reasoning behind it. And that's why he's a fade for me, is because of that injury concern. Chris Palmer says, cash head-to-head, Horschel or Gooch. I'd take Horschel, just a little bit more consistent for you there. Hef Sterling says, DK round 1, Hovland versus Cam Smith. Hammer Smith, I would hammer Smith there. Yes, 100% Hef. My strategy with fading Victor Hovland this week. If you can get plus money against anybody up top that's an elite tier player, I'm taking it this week. In fact, I believe I have 6 units already against Victor Hovland for round 1 alone. So certainly agree with you there, Hef. Sheldon says, thoughts on your no to both Decky and Young. Your perspective is always helpful. Yeah, so I just gave you the thoughts there on Decky. I kind of gave you the thoughts there on Young too. But for me with Young, it's his performance at the Masters was pretty dreadful, right? And at a few other golf courses with quick greens, he's ejected himself. So he's a volatile player. I would have played him this week if he was maybe 10% owned, but he might be 15 to 20% owned, maybe even 25, depending on what kind of contest you're in. It's just the calculus or the game theory with DFS, right, dictates that he's a fade for me. So hopefully that answers your question. If not, go ahead and just let me know where you need clarification. Alex Hahn says, do you like Rory or Morikawa more this week? It's going to be because the weather shifted. So someone asked me this question yesterday, Alex. It's a great question, by the way. I said Roy because the weather was kind of favoring the AM wave. Now that it's equalized and I think it's fair between the AM PM and the PM AM, I'm going to go back to Collin Morikawa. So I hate to have to flip-flop like that, but I like him in a vacuum better than Rory Mcilroy. And now that the weather is just close enough to where I can make those type of distinctions, we'll go with Collin Morikawa. But I love both of them. Nick says, I have a 130 to 1 on Tommy. I like it. He's one of the few long shots I'd be willing to take this week. Ray says, thoughts on Usti. So let's talk about him. So I thought I was going to put him as a core pick. I was actually very close to putting him as a core pick. And I was worried about the injury, right? So I have him down as a blank. I don't hate the play this week. I just like some of the guys priced around him a little bit more. I mean, particularly Cory Connor. It was really, do I want to play Cory Connor or Louis this week? And when we get the wind, that we're expecting there on Thursday and Friday, that was the X factor for me. That's why I chose Cory Connor over Louis. But if you chose Louis Oosthuizen over Cory Connor, I couldn't fault you either, right? Because around the green and putting, that favors Louis, right? He's much better than a Cory Connor. But, I'm favoring a lot of those short game specialists already. I wanted to incorporate a few players into my player pool that are, solid win players. And Cory Connor has certainly proved that over his career. So that's the thought process there. But I don't hate Usti. Again, he was close to being a core pick there on Monday. So obviously I like the play. Nick Marr says Noren and Na dive. So I did that on the core picks. I'm not going to go completely over Noren. I'll just show you the stats, right? So, first and foremost, he's gaining across the board, right? He's gaining in every shots gained category. That should pretty much tell you everything you need to know, right? Usually these players with this type of form are $9,000 or $10,000. The only reason he's not is because it's a major championship. And of course, he had the Sunday finish. So enough said, right? That's all you got to say about Alex Noren there. And then you said Kevin Na. So I'll bring up Kevin Na's stats. I like him here. The stats aren't all that great, right? Other than approach, he's been there, but from a skill set perspective, it makes sense, right? He's going to be accurate. He's going to hit plenty of fairways. His around the green play is among the best in the world historically, right? Maybe not of late, but 2021 season, he was your leader in shots gained around the green. I could see it turning around. So I like Kevin Na. The stats aren't going to back up the play. It's more of a narrative thing than anything. David Porter says thoughts on Hoagie. So yeah, I just mentioned that. I like him. I like the fact that his ball striking and tee to green play is there. So I like him there. Nick Moore says, Peter's terrible play at the Masters scare you any? A little bit, but he's a value pick, right? If he was up there 17% ownership, like a Cameron Young or somebody that was like $8,000 or $9,000, that would probably scare me off of him. But you're talking about like a sub 2% owned play that's in the $6,000 range. It's not enough to scare me off of him. So in short, yeah, it does scare me, but not enough. Michael says it was a late WD. He is not injured. He is good to go with Harmon. Okay. I still don't like the play all that much from a skill set perspective, but that's good to know that he's not injured. So if anyone wants to play Ryan Harmon, I'm assuming he's all good to go then. Tom T says, what do you think the winning score will be? So, geez. I want to give a range, right? Because this is a new golf course, right? We don't know how the wind's going to play. +2 wins it. You're not going to hear any plus numbers from anyone else out there. I guarantee you that, but +2 wins it, okay? Realistically, probably something from even par to like -5 wins it. But we'll go with the extreme there, right? This is we'll give you a hot take there, Tom. Chris Palmer says, damn, I hit Hideki in my cash lineup with 100 left. Go up to Xander or go down to Cantlay. Both are great options. I would probably go down to Cantlay and see what else you can buy with that $200. So take a look at that, Chris, and let me know what your lineup looks like. Shelly Harden says Hovland or Spieth. Spieth all day. I hate Hovland this week. Not even close. Tom T says Noren is an Oklahoma State alumni. I like that, right? So he's used to the windy conditions, but guys like him, a Hovland, a Wolf, Gooch that all went to Oklahoma State, I don't really give them any credit because it's an hour away from the golf course. And even Victor Hovland said himself, he'd only played this golf course once before this month. And again, he's from Oklahoma. He still lives there. And he hadn't played it until this month. So they probably haven't played it. It's a private course, right? It's like a country club. And now they could show up at any country club, and I'm sure they could get a tee time. No questions asked, right? They're not going to have to pay either. But they don't they don't go out of their way, right, to go and play that country club. I'm sure they have plenty of facilities around Stillwater that they play. For those guys that still live there. That's Matthew Wolf. I know he lives there still. Victor Hovland still lives there. And I believe Taylor Gooch does too. So I'm sure they all three get out there and play together, but it's not at Southern Hills Country Club. So don't look into that too much there. David says, thoughts on Kokrak. So let's talk about Kokrak. So the stats would indicate that Kokrak's a great play this week. Let's talk about it though. So, he's gaining across the board, which it's kind of laughable because let's look at the last 50 measured rounds just to give you an idea of what's really going wrong with Kokrak. He has issues across the board. And if you look at a recent sample size, right, he looks, where is he? Where's Jason? Let's see. What's his price? I feel like a Dumbo. He's 8,000. I can't believe, no, wait, what? Okay, there we go. Anyways, found him. So he's gaining across the board, right? Over his last 50 measured rounds, look at this. It's just, he's way cheaper than I thought there. He's starting to lose around the green. You zoom out even more, his around the green gets like atrocious. I mean, last year in 2021, there was a point where he was losing over a third of a stroke per round. I remember vividly at the Charles Schwab Challenge, a golf tournament he ended up winning. He almost completely threw it away with his bunker shots. I mean, it was really, really ugly out there. Multiple times he's been in contention. His around the green play has really let him down. He's kind of got a short game like Victor Hovland. I mean, and I hate to keep harping on that, right? But it's true. His bunker game, especially for Jason Kokrak, not just his around the green play, is scary. It's scary hours. You don't want to be standing in front of him or standing behind the green and hope that he blades one out you because he's probably going to do it more often than most PGA Tour pros. So that would be the issue with Kokrak. His around the green play is some scary stuff to say the least. Jin says, thoughts on Colin Morikawa? I love him this week. He's a core pick for me. I'll probably have him in like 30-35% of my lineup. So I like the ball striking. I like the fact that he won at the Open Championship. So certainly can play in some nasty conditions. So I like that there a lot. And Shot Like Harden says, Bobby Mack or Henley. They're not at the same price. So it's not really a one-to-one matchup there. If you're talking about outside of DFS, right, just from a head-to-head perspective, for me, that would be Robbie Mack. I think that he really prefers these difficult conditions. I mean, he's been quoted as much as saying that, and we're going to get some difficult conditions. So that would be what I'm going with. Tom T says, if you think the score will be that low, I have a hunch that I'm going to bet on. Alex Sheka won the 2021 Senior Championship at this revamped golf course at -8, same as Woods. Hopefully his firepower off the tee is enough. I don't know enough about his game to trash the pick or to tell you really anything about his game. But I think you could do a whole lot worse, right? He's had success here. I was trying to find video and some tape there from that golf tournament. And I wasn't able to find it because I really wanted to do some research into his game. Not even just his game, but everyone that played last year, right? To get an idea where they were putting these pin locations. But I wasn't able to do so. And Jin Yang says, do you think Brian Harmon makes the cut? Probably, because most of the players that are competitive PGA Tour players will make the cut here. That's a byproduct of the fact that there's 20 PGA Tour professionals that are all going to miss the cut. there's at least 10 to 12 past champions that are probably going to go out there and miss the cut, and at least 5 to 10 European Tour / international tour players, including the Asian Tour, that are probably all going to miss the cut. So you're talking almost 40 players that are almost just completely rolled out on their own. So out of the 156, there's 110 to maybe 120 actually competitive players. And since it's the top 70 in ties, usually around 80 players actually end up making the cut. So you're looking at, 2/3 of the players making the cut. So it's really just, is Brian Harmon an above average player? And the answer is yes, right? So I'd put his made cut percentage at something close to, 67, 60, 8%. Let's see what the numbers have, right? We don't even have to guess because that's something that I calculate every single week. So where's Brian Harmon? He's a little bit cheaper than I expect. Yeah, he is. I have him at a 60.5% rate, right? So it's not quite as high as somebody like an Alex Noren, but the average is relatively high this week to begin with. So I'd have to say yes, right? There's a 60% chance. Chris Palmer says, now I have Spieth, Cantlay, Lowry, Fitz, Horschel, and then either Henley or Noren. What are the thoughts on that? I like Noren there for sure. Noren's one of my favorite plays on the slate. And you might have some extra salary there, it seems. So you might actually be able to upgrade somewhere else. So you might want to see how that works out. Chris Wallen says, what's going on? What is going on? Hopefully doing well, Chris. And Chris Palmer says, or do you like this better? So it's Spieth, Cam Smith, Lowry, Fitz, McNeely, and Noren. Let me see. So it's close. I like both of them a lot. One second. Let's go with the second one. I like the second lineup there quite a bit. So we'll go with that there. And nice to see you down in chat, Benny. Hopefully you're doing well here. So, all right, let's go ahead and let's start talking about the 6K range because there are a ton of guys down here I like. I'm going to have a criminally high amount of exposure down here because first off, there's some studs that I'm really trying to jam into lineups, right? Like I said, I'm going to have 40% of guys like a Justin Thomas. So we're going to have to spin down here for quite a few lineups. And there's a lot of good options. So we talked about Bazane Hoot. We talked about some of these guys here. Where are we at? All right. So we stopped off with Seamus Power. So we'll pick it up here with Chris Kirk. Chris Kirk's tee to green stats are on another level. I mean, there's not really another way to put it. He's gaining over half a stroke per round off the tee and on approach, close to half a stroke per round around the green, which is going to be particularly useful this week. And now the putter sucked, right? That's kind of, what's held him back. And if you remember down to the Florida swing, he was gaining close to half a stroke per round with the putter. So he does it. He's a pop putter. This is an aggressive, high risk play, but also an unbelievably high upside play. Now, Chris Kirk's not winning PGA Championship. I can pretty much tell you that definitively. But for him to finish in the top 5, top 10, now that is certainly within the range of outcomes. Kevin Na, we talked about. I like him this week. I just think from a skill set perspective, we like him. Robert McIntyre, I talked up on the value picks. We talked about his he likes hard conditions, right? So I'll certainly be there. Aaron Wise, he's shown an ability down in South Florida at the Honda Classic. Similar wind conditions to what we're going to have this week. He gains from tee to green, right? So if we take a look at the shots gained, you'll see he gains in every category but the putter. So kind of similar to a few of the other picks down low that we're taking, like a Chris Kirk, for example, that I'm willing to take a risk on. If they go out there and even, are a neutral to the field with the putter, could end up being a pretty solid week for them. All right, let's keep moving. So we got Kisner. He's kind of similar to a Kevin Na, right? Both Kevins there with the short game. So I could see myself playing him. Kevin Streelman, he was pretty good at major championships for whatever reason. It's because he plays a relatively boring brand of golf. Just hits a lot of fairways, hits a lot of greens, makes a lot of two putts. That's going to be useful this week. I could see myself playing Herbert. I could see myself playing a Matt Kuchar. One second, guys. Got some in my throat. I don't love the plays, right, because of their ball striking stats, but they're both good around the green players. So that's why they're both down as blanks there. Adrian Arnaus, he's a much better player than his peers. On the European Tour, he's been pretty impressive over the years. Garrett Higo, I'm not playing him because of his around the green play, but I could see it. Minwoo Lee, high upside player. Not sure if I'm getting there myself, but I've seen quite a few people playing him this week. I could see it working out. Mido Pereira at $6,700. He's just a ball striking fiend. I'm going to love myself some Mido. So he's only 2.8% owned. You don't have to play very much to get leverage. I'll certainly have a little bit. Stuart Sink, I like the fact that he's been good at these positional courses. He's only 0.8% owned. He played good at the Masters, right? Very similar greens and around the green play to what we're going to have this week. So I could see him playing well. Heath Mitchell, just a high upside play here in the 6K range. Matt Jones, I love the around the green play. Talked about him and the value picks. Love the play. I'm going to have about 15 to 20% there. Mackenzie Hughes always shows up at difficult conditions, so could be worth a look there. Arnaban Lahiri is playing some damn good golf. So just to show you the recent form, Arnaban is gaining in every category. Enough said, right? That's exactly what we're looking for. Lucas Glover, sleeper pick. I think he's being a little bit slept on here. A few blanks here. Richard Bland played well at the Open. Guys like JJ Spawn, been in a lot better form than some of his peers. Troy Merritt, I considered putting as a yes. In fact, he'll probably make it into the player pool come tonight. So let's go ahead and put the yes there ceremonially. But love Adam Hadman, already in my exposure. Anto Griffin, kind of just underpriced at $6,300. I also have Ryan Fox. Ryan Fox is a relatively impressive year. Knew it was coming. I could feel it coming. You can probably see it on my face too. I was pulling that back. I feel much better now though. Ryan Palmer here at 60. I almost called Ryan Palmer. Ryan Fox though, he's a bomber. He's pretty decent around the green. He won recently on the European Tour, so he has that going for him, and better on bent grass than most surfaces. So I like him there at $6,300, and even at $6,100. Last year, he finished in the top 5. Really surprised a lot of people, but Padraig Harrington there at $6,100. There's one thing he does well. It's get the ball up and down. At this point of his career, it's kind of what he's known for, and the ball striking has been a lot better than people give him credit for. So I'm going to take any shot down low. It'll be on somebody with his short game. I was also looking at Dean Burmeister a little bit. Burmeister, very solid European Tour guy, so kind of similar to a Ryan Fox. I just prefer Fox a little bit more because of that recent win. Ju Young Kim is an absolute stud. You might not know who he is right now, but you will over the next year or so. Ball striking is unbelievable there. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the player pool, guys. So we'll touch on some questions here before we hop on out of here. Actually, I'll go ahead and share my screen for the projections, because obviously we'll want to go through some stats here with the questions, and then we're going to hop on out of here. I do have to get to something. So let's go ahead and see what questions you have. And if you do have any questions, please go ahead and put them down in chat. Wilson Dog says, what about Matt Fitzpatrick? He's down as a core pick for me. So you hit the nail on the head there. Absolutely love him this week. Mark Leishman as well, also in my player pool. So I like Mark Leishman's around the green play, where he's a well-rounded player. Now, the ball striking, especially off the tee, hasn't been quite as stout as late as we'd hope for somebody like a Mark Leishman, but maybe he can turn it around. Catch Me If You Can says, I'm out this week. The Aka Wizard Ted Potter is not in the field. Yeah, I mean, what are they doing? They got to have Ted Potter Jr. in the field, or else everybody's missing out. It's kind of like, not having the big cat there, right? It's a glaring missing piece. Chris Vaughn says, top 3 guys you think can win regardless of DFS price or chalkiness. So if I had to pick 3 guys to win, let's go to the top of the board, right? So you certainly got to go to the top of the board, right? Because they're not worried about price or ownership. Shane Lowry would be number 1. Like I said, I've told everyone I think that Shane Lowry is going to win this week. Number 2 would be Colin. Colin is always live at major championships. I think he's always got to be up there in terms of his win equity. And then the number 3 is close. And I'll give you 3 contenders for number 3 because it's really hard to differentiate. It'd be Justin Thomas, Jordan Spieth, and Scotty Scheffler, right? All of them solid around the green, coming in with decent form. Just from a mental perspective, I really prefer somebody like a Colin Morikawa or even Shane Lowry. Shane Lowry loves when it's difficult. Like he more than anything, you see him smiling out there, like especially when he won over there for the Open Championship. He looks like he was enjoying those conditions. That's the type of player that I want, right? That has that mental game. Colin Morikawa is kind of similar. So those are the 3 I'll take, right? We go Shane Lowry, Colin Morikawa, and then the tie between JT Scheffler and Jordan Spieth. I think all 5 of those players have a really good shot at winning this week. Nick Marr says, we always have to catch a chalk guy that misses the cut. Who is it this week? Victor Hovland. It's Victor Hovland, for sure. Not even close. I hate Victor Hovland this week. I don't understand the love affair for him. Let's just leave it there. I'm very adamant about him not being good at major championships. And until I'm proven wrong, I will be this adamant. It won't change because it's proven me right time and time again. David Porter says, Cooch had him last week at 6% worked out. Different golf course though, right? Going from a birdie fest to a more difficult affair. That's what I'm worried about. Catch Me If You Can says, talking about Europeans makes me choke too. Yeah, right. As soon as I mentioned Patrick Harrington or Ryan Fox, right, started making me want to choke. Benny Levine says, LOL. Probably talking about Catch Me If You Can's sly comment there, which I loved. Nick Mars says, let's dig into the big rig. He played okay at the Masters. He played about the Masters because he's decent around the green. Did I have him as a yes? I think I might have. Or it's at the very least he's a blank. I know he's super cheap. All right, let's just search for him. $6,500. And I had him as a blank, right? So he's not in the player pool as of right now. He might sneak his way in. His shots gained, I can almost guarantee you, are really ugly. But, and we'll get to the but here in a second. What's the price again? 65. All right. So yeah, he's losing in every category, period, but almost not losing around the green. Yeah, I don't know if I can get there. He's got the skill set fit, right? But he's been horrible. He's been horrible for like half a year at this point. I don't even know if he's going to make the Netflix documentary, which I hope he does, right? He's an entertaining guy. I really want to see him in the Netflix documentary. But he hasn't like made any cuts for quite some time, other than the one at the Masters, which was surprising, right? I had him that week too. I called that performance, which was kind of out of nowhere. I just had a feeling about it that week. I'm not sure I can get to him this time, though, unfortunately. Jin Yang says, do you think Hovland will finish top 10? No, I think he misses the cut. Wilson Dog says, what about Thomas Peters? I have him in the player pool. I did talk him up a little bit, so maybe go back in the stream there a little bit. You'll be able to hear my full take on him, but he's played well at the API. He's also played pretty decently at major championships, so I think he has an affinity for difficult conditions, so I will be playing him this week. Chris Palmer says, with the extra 300, I would think by going Noren over Henley, okay, you can't really upgrade is what you're saying. So you might go with Spieth and Smith, but I'm leery of McNeely. Yeah, McNeely would be the only X factor in that lineup, if I remember the entire lineup correctly. But in theory, he makes sense at his price. So he should make the cut. You're talking about 70%, 65% of all the quote unquote competitive players making the cut. But yeah, I get the hesitancy for sure. He's a little bit volatile. Can you check Ian Poulter? So yes, I do have Ian Poulter. So we'll show you some of the stats. He's been much better of late than he has been. So he's gaining around the green, gaining with the putter, but starting to get closer to a neutral off the tee and on approach. I mean, he was missing all of those cuts in the fall. He was losing close to a stroke per round in both categories. So if you take a look at the recent form, his actual finishes, I don't believe they're all that impressive, but they're not all that bad. Yeah, 59. So he made the cut, right? Made the cut in the team event, made the cut at the Heritage. It's been a lot better than it was in the fall. So I understand it with Ian Poulter. He's not my favorite play. I'm probably going to have 9 lineups out of 150, something around there with Ian Poulter, but I wouldn't talk him up, right? He's just kind of in the player pool, kind of just there for me. If you're playing 2 to 3 max or single entry, I wouldn't be playing Ian Poulter. Ray Flores says, thoughts on Oliver Becker? He's done well for you. So I hate to say I don't know anything about a player, but I know nothing about his game. I'm not a big DP World Tour player, so you probably know more about him than me. If he's a good short game player, if he's somebody who's a relatively sharp putter, then yes. But I haven't done the research on it. In fact, I thought he was a PGA professional. Just if that tells you how much I know about his game. So you probably know more about him than me, Ray. So I would go with your knowledge there. And Pour Me Up says, what's up, boss? By any chance you do underdog as well? I don't do underdog at this point, but very similar to kind of props that they have over there on Prize Picks. So if you watch my Prize Picks video, you'll probably get a good idea for how I'm taking apart the golf course. You could probably use that towards underdog. But unfortunately, man, no, I'm not doing content for that as of this point. Shot Like Karn says, I feel like everybody's going to start with Spieth and Smith. Yeah, I could see, Spieth is going to be like 20-25% owned. Smith, I think, is a little bit more overlooked because people are giving him a lot of crap for the Zurich Classic. Also the Masters round 4, right? He shanked a ton of tee shots out there. I think he might be lower owned than Jordan Spieth, but yeah, Jordan Spieth is going to be super chalk. Parmy Up says they have Koepka and Morikawa at 72.5 strokes. Yeah, that's what I mean. So like if you watch that preview and they have better lines over there, right? So then by all means, right, go out there and take those lines. So that's what I would say about that. But that's all I've got here for the stream, guys. We're going to go ahead and end it here. I do have to get to something. So if you do have any questions, you're watching this on replay, do not be shy at all to go ahead and comment those down below. We will have Showdown and some Prize Picks content dropping throughout the weekend. So when the round ends, I'd assume that's right around 7:30, 8 p.m. Eastern time. Give me a half an hour to an hour to put together the projections, and we'll be going live. So look forward to that. I'll be posting all of the links to those on my social media. So if you're trying to catch them, be able to, know when I'm going live, not actually have to watch it on replay, make sure to follow me on Twitter. That's probably the best way to do so. So link is in the description to go ahead and follow me on Twitter. Until next time, guys, best of luck with all of your lineups, and let's get this cash.